Hey everybody, it's Monday night, it's almost 8 o'clock, and I figured I would do my styling video tonight. Pagan Living has already done their public Samhain celebration. We did this last Wednesday, I might have mentioned it. It was a supper, memorial supper. The religious aspects were very dumbed down because we did have non-pagan guests. It was most of the party was consisted of non-pagan guests. But at this supper we did have a memorial table that was half set up like an altar, half set up like a typical memorial. We had pictures, some trinkets, different things like that. I also did attend a public ritual held by one of my favorite stores at home. It was about 15 to 20 of us, and it was a full-on, no-holds-barred Celtic style pagan ritual. It was very, very solemn because it was Samhain. It was a little mournful for some people because, at least in my group at home, my client at home, we've had several deaths just this year, and it's been very hard. This is the year of death. We've dubbed it the year of death. And of course, Saturday, our clan is going to have our own ritual, so it's going to have a good 2 or 3 rituals this year already. But because we've had so many deaths at home and a few at school, and some of my friends at school have had deaths in their family, it's just been a really crazy year as far as death and dying and illness is concerned. And it's one of those things that it's really hard to talk about, especially in a culture that is don't talk about that. It's not one of those things we talk about openly. But if you're celebrating Samhain, Samhain is a holiday about death. I mean, it sounds very harsh, holiday called death, but it's really not. So at the dinner, the little Halloween dinner we had at school last Wednesday, trying to teach and show and explain our traditions and our practices and our lifestyles to the non-pagan students, it's difficult. Especially when you're talking about your dead relatives and your dead friends, and you become uncomfortable. They just sit there checking you out, like, why are we talking about death? I don't want to talk about death. It's not something we can talk about. Or putting myself in the position of a non-pagan, probably monotheistic person, what happens when you die? Many people think that they go to heaven or hell or some sort of physical afterlife. Well, if you're somebody like me, or if you're a pagan, you probably don't believe in a physical afterlife. What do you believe in? Personally, and I know most of my clan and most of my pagan living group at school is probably on the same page as me with this. It's reincarnation and being an entity, a spirit, wandering the earth. Both are very taboo. Again, in our culture, we don't. What's reincarnation? You crazy? We don't live many lives as ghosts. Nobody believes in ghosts. Unless they're New Agers or things like ghost hunters for the thrill of it. But it's not a real thing. You can't take it seriously. But if you're pagan, it's a very serious thing. We don't joke about things like this. It's part of our religion. It's part of our life. Death is part of everybody's life. I'm 22 years old, and someday I'm not really afraid of it at all, because it happens to everybody. You can't avoid it. That being said, let's go back 5,000 years to Ireland and probably Great Britain and France, Germany, even Western Europe, where Halloween kind of was formed. I think it was primarily formed by the Irish Celts, but of course it did spread throughout Europe over time. They did call it Samhain, Samhain. It looks like Samhain, but it is not Samhain. One of the first things you learn if you're practicing Wicca or paganism, one of the first things you learn is how to pronounce Samhain, and that went for me too. The first thing I learned was how to pronounce the word. It translates to, depending on the source, November, summer's end, harvest, different things, but they're all related. Fall, November, and the summer, harvest. They're all correlated. And it was a time because it was the dark and cold time of year now. if you look out your window right now, if you're in the northern hemisphere, or at least in the northern United States, like I am right now, if you look out your window, it's cold. The trees are turning orange, yellow, and red, and they're losing their leaves. It looks like a typical October, almost into November. And when you wake up in the morning, at least where I am in Massachusetts, it's cold, and there's condensation on the windows, and they go outside, and it's crisp and chilly. That's fall. But yes, it's pretty, and it's comfortable, but the earth, to say this, the earth is dying, at least in the northern hemisphere, for the winter. Animals aren't gone. You don't see any animals wandering around outside anymore, like they used to in summer. Coyotes were everywhere. You don't see them right now. So because the year is coming to an end, in the Gregorian calendar, which is not so much different from the Celtic calendar. The Celtic calendar, their New Year is Samhain. Samhain is the Celtic New Year. In the Gregorian calendar, which is what we're using, January 1st is the New Year, so it's not that far off. With the Celtic New Year, you ask me, why is the New Year at the beginning of winter? Shouldn't the New Year be at the end of winter? But again, it doesn't really work out like that way in the Gregorian calendar either. The Celts took Samhain as their New Year because if you're a Celt, death was also a new beginning. Let's take for a moment the Mayan calendar. It's supposed to end on Yule, December 21st, which is Pagan Yule, 2012. Now, all these people are like, oh, the world's going to end in 2012. No, shut up, it's not going to end. Really, nothing's going to happen. At least not on the grand scale of Armageddon. If you're looking at the Celts and even the Mayans, death and the end, which kind of correlated, death and the end, was never the end. After death, you were born again into a different life, or I should say reincarnated into a different life. And in the case of winter, spring comes after winter, life comes after death. You see what I'm getting at? So, it all correlates, it all goes together. So back 5,000 years ago, even now, with Celtic thinking, the practices are almost exactly the same. Of course, we have technology, and we're in the 21st century now, so it's not mirrored, but it's similar. And I actually have a book. This book. It's not the best, I would say, the Sabbath book, but it is the best. But this will have to be. It's Celtic myth and magic. And the Samhain, I'm going to read it for you. It's a little clip of a poem by William Allingham, Bard of Donegal. I heard the dogs howl in the moonlight. I went to the window to see the sight. All the dead that I ever knew, going one by one and two by two. Notice how he says all the dead I ever knew. Like that. And the date, of course, was October 31st. Other names for Samhain, Halloween, obviously, or Hallowmas. Halloween, if you look at it, if you kind of split the word up, it Hallows Eve. Halloween. Hallows obviously being sacred or holy. Very important. Symbols. You see cauldrons, witches, jack-o'-lanterns, balefires, and ghosts. What else? Werewolves, whatever. In paganism, neo-paganism, or what you call it, the deities are crone goddess, or dying, aging god, gods of death, representative of death, or gods of the otherworld, afterlife. The Morrigan, in the Celtic pantheon, there's the Morrigan, there's Hecate, in the Greek pantheon, and there's various and sundry gods. In Wicca, there is the crone goddess. She's your maiden mother crone. Crone goddess is an old woman representing death and dying.